Hello, good evening. Welcome to Discovering Buddhism. Alan here. I hope you're well and hope you're warm. Good to be here. So we're on our third class of the 4 classes on this module, Presenting the Path. So today is the third class and next week's the last class. And then we have a break for the mid-year break. So we will be breaking for DB, but we will be keeping the drop-in meditation classes going if you do those as well. So I'll be doing my Friday class and Deki and Waichong will be doing their meditation classes right through the break. So I think Rain decided it would be good to keep these classes going because a lot of people are at home. So we're going to keep the meditation classes going. And then the centre opens again on the 4th of August, which is a Tuesday, I believe. And Tony said he chose that it was an auspicious day. So I think that might mean we won't be doing our DB class on the 3rd if the centre doesn't open until the 4th. So I guess we start, I'll check on that. Otherwise, we'll be starting the Monday after the 4th of August, the DB. So, so let's, before we lunge in, do 5 minutes of calm to calm the mind, 5 minutes of mindfulness of breath meditation. So get comfortable and we'll start. So remember, this is just the simplest breathing meditation. The body has to be comfortable, the mind to be comfortable. So find a good spot on a chair, on the floor, lying down, sitting up, cross-legged, whatever. Start with our body, making sure we're comfortable. Scanning the body. Feeling the weight of our body on the floor or the chair. Relaxing the shoulders and the head and the neck. And using the out breath to breathe out any tension. Imagine we're just letting go all the holding on. Letting go all the busyness of the day. All the mental busyness, the chit-chat. Breathing it out. And then just watching the breath moving the body. The simple movement of the breath in the body. Standing aside, no control, just watch. Home to the breath. No good breath, no bad breath, just the movement of the breath. remember to keep a small part of the mind as a watch, security watch, watching, monitoring, alert. When we notice we've left the breath, distracting thought, that's the practice we've noticed. Be glad we noticed. And gently let go. Disconnect from the thought. Patiently come back to the breath. And stay with the breath. A full flow of the in-breath, full flow of the out-breath. Stay with it. Just relax. So hopefully you got the notes I sent out, was it yesterday, I think? They are getting longer. I apologize for that. But I actually thought, since we can't actually have a discussion properly, or at all really, it's probably just better to give you a bit more on paper. And also there's the fact that we do have this connection that can drop out quite easily. That's why we moved the class 4 to 6 o'clock. Seemed to be less traffic at this time than there was when we started at 7 o'clock. Seems to be working, but it still could, hi Julia, it's still a little bit unreliable. So anyway, a lot of the notes are a collection really of my own research, what Wai Chong left behind when he did the class. Wai Chong and Choki both left me notes, so I'm using some of that. And then some of the material that DB, the curriculum people, give teachers. They have a special file for teachers, and they have a collection of suggested, they call it suggested topics or courses, suggested courses, which are just different suggestions of what to teach with each module and within each class sometimes. The detail varies. There's a lot of detail in this particular module that I got, and some of it's very good. So some teachers teach this class for months, 8 weeks, 10 weeks sometimes. But I think, so there's, when I looked, I noticed the people who do teach them over a long period, their content overlaps a lot of the subjects that we do later, a lot of the other modules. So I think 4 weeks is probably enough for most of the modules. And so tonight, I've just got a couple of questions there just to refresh memory of what we did last week. So let's have a look. Basically last week we were looking at the Atisha's classification of how to practice the Dharma, the different levels of practice and different levels of practitioner. So last week, the being of small scope is what they usually call it. Sounds a little bit belittling, being of small scope, or His Holiness calls it the beginning, initial level of practice, the first level, which just really is much probably better title. The being at first level practice, being of second level of intermediate practice, and the practitioner at the advanced level. So what's the name of the text that this teaching came from by Atisha? I've already answered the second question. Do you remember that? Can I hear? Yes, Lamp of the Path is correct. It's Lamp of the Path. So Lamp of the Path is the text, the very first attempt to write a Lamrim text, which condensed all the Buddha's teachings into one place, which Atisha very skillfully did. The century, don't worry, I had to look it up, the 11th century it was, and it was in Tibet. So Atisha travelled to Tibet and taught the Lamp of the Path, the 11th century. This Atisha, just this as a sidetrack, yesterday I was watching some teachings by Geshe Zopa, who teaches now every Sunday afternoon live on YouTube, and you can get the link from the FPMTA website, not the FPMT website, FPMTA, FPMT Australia. So that they've organised Geshe Zopa to teach for the sort of on Mondays. I think it's going to go for quite a few weeks. I think he's already done, I think 3 weeks on different topics. And the current topic is an Atisha text, not Lamp of the Path, but it's a text about Atisha's life story. Wonderful. So I just came into it yesterday, and I've got the text is available. The actual story that Geshe Zopa uses, it's like it's in a book which the FPMT website will have a link to. So you can actually buy the hard copy book, or you can actually download the digital copy. It's called Mind Training. It is a major book. It's a collection of many different teachings of all the great masters by wisdom, which I've had on the shelf, and I haven't barely opened it because it seemed a little bit formidable. But when I heard that Geshe Zopa's teaching one of the texts out of it, I was delighted to be able to use it. So anyway, that's a teaching. Geshe Zopa very skillfully teaching Atisha's life story. Apparently, he was very, very privileged. Like the Buddha, he grew up as a king in a palace, and also like the Buddha, he had a strong sense of wanting to leave the luxury life and the mundane world and just practice Dharma, which he eventually did, and became an incredibly skillful, renowned teacher. He also travelled to Indonesia, and there's a story about that, by ship, many months, to meet his teacher. I hope I can remember that. Salinga, I think, is Atisha's teacher, who was living in Indonesia, in Java, somewhere near where Borobudur is, in Java. So there's an amazing story about the perils of the ship journey, where they nearly became shipwrecked, and there was sea monsters trying to devour the ship and so on. So there was, this is all part of the story that Geshe Zopa tells. So there's something to, if you've got a free afternoon on Sunday afternoon, you can also watch it later, of course, because all YouTube teachings are there available to catch up on later. Okay, so what are Atisha's three-level practice? Well, we've already mentioned that. Initial, intermediate, and higher level. So we're going to be looking mainly at the intermediate level this class. So then I threw in this last question, which is one of mine. Can one lead an ethical life without knowing anything about karma? So this sort of came to mind when I was thinking that last week we were talking about the noble first, second, third noble truth, suffering and its causes, and how the initial level practitioner is aware of karma. So the initial level practitioner can see how cause and effects work. He's aware of the lower realms, so that if he's not careful with his actions of body, speech, and mind, he could end up in the lower realms. And the lower realms being the worst, which is the hell realms, which we haven't talked much about. Incredible suffering, impossible to practice. Then there's the hungry ghost realms, where it's impossible to get enough food or drink. And then there's the animal realm, which is the one we can actually see, and very lot of suffering there we can actually see, particularly in the sea realm, in the ocean. So if the initial level practitioner is aware of this, and the last thing I want to do is end up in the lower realm. So they're very mindful of their actions of body, speech, and mind. They want to have a rebirth in an upper realm, the upper realms being either the human realm or the God realms, which is all pleasure. Still in samsara. It's not perfect. So a perfect human body, or in the God realms, and if the perfect human body may, if they meet the perfect teacher and the Dharma, and have the opportunity, then they can practice, do further practice, and work through the path, work along the path to liberation for enlightenment. So what about the person who's got absolutely no knowledge of karma? Maybe someone we know. Actually, to be honest, what reminded me of this is my own father, who's incredibly, he's passed away just a few years ago. But here am I, working away, trying to be a good Buddhist for many decades. But the more, particularly in later life, I realised that my father had infinite patience. No one ever saw him angry. No one who ever worked with him, and I spoke to many of them, ever saw him angry. I never saw him angry. Our family never saw him angry. Always easygoing. In every photo, family photo, he's the one smiling the most. Person's having the best time, most relaxed. So how does he do it? These people are rare, have extraordinary karma. Obviously, they've created the causes to be like this. They know that's not interested in Buddhism. He's told me he wasn't interested. He wasn't against it. He certainly didn't have any strong Christian views, but he just had this incredible ability to go through life happy, and being good to be around, with a very even-minded approach. So he never got too excited about things going really well, never got too excited about things going really badly, which really is this equanimity of mind that is one of the great virtues in Buddhist psychology. So can someone, there are other people we might know too, not necessarily our teachers, but people who have no Dharma contact, family or friends, who have great patience and great virtue without knowing anything about karma. So yes, of course, these people are living an ethical life, but by instinct they know how to avoid, how not to be angry, and how to be kind. It's by something innate, and excellent good example. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama is always, certainly in the last few years, been talking a lot about secular ethics. And even in his last teaching a week or two ago, he mentioned how important it was to have a good heart. A good heart, he says, is the basis. Even no need to have a religion, he said. No need to practice, to have faith. If you've got a good heart, then everything will go well in this life. People will like you, and a good life and a good death, and auspicious next life. Definitely, these people are great examples for us. So then I thought, what happens? These people have this instinctive. They have something that their mind has already done practices in the past to give them these compassion, generosity, patience, and so on. But if they're not aware of Dharma, what happens if things go wrong? Okay, so my father probably not a good example, because he could always ride out difficulty. He had many difficulties in his career and so on, but never. It didn't trouble him. But there are other people, perhaps, who've got lead an ethical life, a very good ethical life, and then for some reason either someone in their family, maybe themselves, they have a health problem, have a disaster, maybe lose a child, something really tragic. How, if you no knowledge of karma, no knowledge of dharma, could be more difficult. Could be more difficult for those people. So there's many things that we can learn from the Dharma to help us in this life and in future life, particularly when things go wrong. Well, it's when the chocolate runs out, as Lamrim says. So there's also the unbelievably sophisticated teachings of Buddhist psychology and Buddhist philosophy, such as the teachings on emptiness, without being able to have access to teachers and teachings on these, how much progress could we make with our minds in this life. So there is, I think, great advantages in making contact with the Dharma, of course, so that we can make progress in this and future lives. Anyway, so it's an interesting question. Maybe if we had a real class, we'd probably get some good discussion in that. But it won't be long, next month. Oh, August, September, August, yeah. Okay, so babbling along. So I've just, to sum up what the lower capable being, the beginning practitioner is praying for. I just put that excerpt from morning prayers that are in the FMT prayer book, which Lama Zopa says that is good for us to read every morning, which I try to do. So this one is the prayer for the lower capable being. Please bless me to see that this grateful, meaningful body with 8 freedoms and 10 riches. So this means our perfect human body. We did that meditation last week. So to see that is so difficult to find and easily perish. It's very impermanent. To appreciate this opportunity we've got, help me to realise that. So help you to realise that action result is so profound. That is, karma works. Karma is reality. Negative actions of body, speech, and mind will cause suffering in the future. Suffering of the evil transmigrating beings is so difficult to bear. So without watching what I do, think and speak, I could end up in the lower realms, the evil transmigrating beings, those the hell realms, the hungry gross realms, the animal realms, which I don't want to do. So therefore, I go for refuge from the depths of my heart to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the rare sublime one. So that's I reject all those mistakes I've made, causes of suffering, abandoning negative karma, and accomplish the practice of virtue. So as much as possible, avoid negative actions, as much as possible, accomplish positive actions, virtue. So this is like a just very a very concise summary of that path, that thinking, and of course it's incredibly powerful too. This is why Lama Zopa used to spend at the Kopan course, probably spend sometimes almost half the course speaking on the lower realms. Some people would just go crazy, some would leave. What he's doing is developing this healthy fear of rebirth in the lower realms. And then he'll build on that and talk about karma, purification, and so on. So this week we're on the second capable being. So this means just we'll look at the prayer of the middle capable being, which is in the same morning prayers that Lama Zopa has given us. It's please bless me to that independence upon that. That is what the lower capable being is wishing for. Even if I do achieve a higher rebirth as a human being or a deva, that's a god, I'll have to experience suffering endlessly in this samsara, because that means I won't actually be free of suffering, because of not having abandoned being under control of disturbing thought obscuration. So this intermediate being has realized that actually just being born in a human body is not going to solve the problem, because there are still, they understand the first noble truth, that suffering exists. They understand the subtle type of suffering, which is the one that we pursue unsatisfactorily, the outside pleasures, outside comforts, the body. So this person has realized outside comforts the body. So this person has realized that that's actually not happiness, but it's time we need to abandon that sort of suffering, that sort of pursuit, because we're still under the control of negative thoughts, disturbing thoughts, and also past karma. So therefore, by reflecting well upon the way of cycling in samsara, how unless we do something about these ingrained obscurations, disturbing thoughts, often they're called, particularly greed, hatred, and ignorance are the root afflictions, then I'll be in this cycle of rebirth, uncontrolled rebirth. So help me to follow continuously day and night the path of three types of precious training, three types of precious training, which is the principal method liberating from that samsara. So this is basically the training of ethics, concentration, and wisdom, with the emphasis on the wisdom. So, so this prayer of the middle capable being, which Rabina calls high school, from primary school to high school. At high school, there's more emphasis on the causes of suffering, the subtle types of suffering, realizing that just being born in a good upper realm is not actually the end going to solve the problem. So that person has realized a lot. So these, as it says there at the bottom of page 1, middle teachings are presented to expand our notion of what is humanly possible, and that actually it's possible to be rid of all suffering as causes. And this is what the middle capable being has settled on, has decided that they want. They don't want to come back. They don't want to come back in any kind of rebirth, because they can see it all as suffering. But this determination to be free, determination free, is probably a more modern way of just, or maybe a softer way of saying that the person has developed incredible renunciation. A mind that is just determined to leave this situation that they're in, using the human body that they've got, which is a good situation to have a human body, but being uncontrolled under the delusions of karma and ignorance is not good. So this is incredible state, a fantastic, incredible, amazing feat for a person, for a being to develop this amount of renunciation, and Ramaswamy says it's like having the feeling that you're in a septic tank. You just have to get out. It's just completely unbearable. So having the wisdom to see what ordinary beings might see as pleasure, actually causes of suffering. And so to Rabina is quite good on this. If you've managed to read some of or all of her amazing transcript, which is extraordinarily vast and detailed. So she doesn't spend a lot of time talking about the middle capable being, but she points out how this level of practice is extraordinarily difficult to attain and takes an incredible amount of good of practice and good karma and merit. So just looking at halfway down the page there. So the realizations have been achieved at the first level. Realizations of precious human life, impermanence, that the human life can end at any moment, and that the upper realms is just as much suffering as the lower realms. Probably not just as much, but in a way. The problem with the Deva realm, which is the God realm, human realm, you can see that there are problems. But the Deva realm, when I first heard about it, I thought, this sounds fantastic. These people are totally, there's nothing else but pleasure eternally for eons. Like the length of a day in the God realm is apparently many, many years. I can't remember exactly how many. But there's just this endless experience of pleasure. So that these beings are extremely beautiful environments, incredible luxury, food, drink, everything you can imagine, much, much more pleasure than the best of the billionaires and those who have luxury living in the human realm, way beyond that. But the problem is, eventually, the good karma is used up. There's no opportunity to create more good karma. These minds are intoxicated with pleasure, not interested in doing anything to create more positive karma, create more causes for progressing, and eventually their karma will run out and they'll go to the lower realms. And apparently it's incredibly sad. Rinpoche has described it as when it's time for their karma to run out in the God realms, they start losing their luster, the flowers start to fade that they're wearing. They get rejected by the other beings who don't want someone who's unattractive around, and they can see, they've got clairvoyance, so they can see that they're heading for the lower realms, and it's not incredible suffering. So they're still in the cycle. They can't do anything about it because they're in cyclic existence. So it's not as good as the human realm, because what they can't, in the human realm we have access to teaching, teachers, the brain, and when not have leisure time, which we can use, we can develop some renunciation, which they can't. So just looking at the energy and willpower to practice at this middle level comes from reflecting on suffering, the unsatisfactory nature of samsara. So Rabina describes this as a realm where there's all stains, all obscurations of the mind have been purified. So they've done extraordinary practice. They've eliminated all the obscurations. They've in particular realized emptiness. They've realized the wisdom realizing emptiness. They've attained shamatha, calm abiding. They can focus on any object as long as they wish, and they use that power to understand reality, the nature of the self. So that all the causes of rebirth have been eliminated. They've uprooted all misconceptions. So this is what is often referred to as the wisdom wing. So in our Mahayana teaching, we said there's actually two wings that need to fly us to enlightenment: the compassion and the wisdom wing. So so the wisdom wing is what the arhats, these arts of what we call these beings who have realized in emptiness. So they've realized emptiness, but they're practicing for their own liberation. They're completely driven by wanting to get out of suffering. So the main preoccupation is to not come back, in uncontrolled rebirth. So the thought is to get out, and so they are in a state of nirvana. Whereas in this is the Theravadan teaching, who basically say that the nirvana is the state of enlightenment, or nirvana is the ultimate state. So, but in the Tibetan Mahayana teaching, it's said that even at the state of the arhat, realized emptiness, there are some subtle stains still. And I think Lama Yeshe mentioned something like a pot that's has held some herb and it's washed, but there's still a smell that you can smell of what was in the container. So these incredibly subtle stains, obscurations are there. This is according to the Mahayana, Tibetan Buddhist teaching. And so the Mahayana practitioner uses bodhicitta, which is compassion, unbelievable, powerful compassion, to eliminate these stains using the power of the mind and become a fully enlightened being, omniscient being. So that's the higher capable being. So this is why the Mahayanas say that you don't have to work your way up through the arhat stage and then start doing the practice for the Mahayana to be fully enlightened. I remember Rinpoche saying this, could have been at the last retreat last year, that if those arhats, the people who've got liberated from samsara, they're in nirvana. I was quite shocked when I heard this. So this is why, even when you hear teachings in the Mahayana level about the middle capable being, this is emphasis to also practice compassion. So so this practice compassion. So so this is why the just going back to the page again, just looking at the bottom of page 2 there. So so the Pali tradition, which is the Theravadan teachings, based on the Pali Canon, Pali language, these teachings of original teachings of the Buddha, use these the 8 points that the Eightfold Noble Path, which is taught by to cessation and true paths. So these eightfold path is what the Theravadan practitioners will use in that tradition. But even so, I've actually put them there. I'm not going to go through them one by one. I won't have time. It could be tedious going through a list. I put them in because they were available in some of the teachers' material. So you've got them. There's another. We come back to them in other modules. The Eightfold Path. They're actually, if you remember from last week, the 10 non-virtues, which is what the initial level practitioner practice is, they're all cut through this. The 10 non-virtues are sort of scattered through this and really like a different. This is just a different way of presenting them. So, but I guess if you wanted to distinguish this initial level of what Rabina calls primary school and high school, the high school practitioner is totally renounced and totally determined to leave cyclic existence. Doesn't want to come back as in a higher rebirth. So they've got much stronger renunciation, and they're using that renunciation to develop shamatha, and using that shamatha So, this, I think we might have done might have been last week or the week before. We actually did the meditation on suffering. So the middle level practitioner has a full understanding of that subtle second type of suffering, the suffering of change that we all experience in this human realm, where there's nothing outside. The external quest for satisfaction is never actually satisfied. Rabina, of course, she uses the chocolate cake and does a lot of teaching of the chocolate cake in a very deep way. And she said it's not about the chocolate cake, this grasping, wanting, but it's to fill a need of that we're not complete whole, the feeling that we're not completely whole. So not completely whole, I am not completely whole. There's this feeling that I needs more. So how it's actually is actually in fact suffering, and he also sees the third type of suffering, which is the suffering all pervasive. As long as we're driven by karma and delusions, as long as our mind has these defilements, we've got bad karma that we're going to have to experience, we're still suffering under delusions, particularly ignorance of how things exist. As long as we're under those controls, we're going to be in this cycle. So this is what some of them are about the body, what we do with our actions, some about what we say, our speech, and some about the mind. The first two about what actions should be a practice and what should be abandoned. And then these sort of right hands. I noticed the numbering system goes a bit haywire. We missed out on first right understanding. So the first two, right understanding and right thought, very much overlap. And so this practitioner, but how, why, and how the mind is the cause of everything. So what is positive action? What thought ultimately, I think we've mentioned the three big ones, greed, or attachment, holding on. It's probably a better word than greed. Hatred is aversion, the opposite, rejecting, and ignorance, not understanding the way things exist. And because of that, that's called the root delusion. It's because of not understanding the way things exist that the other two arise. So this level practitioner realized that, determined to realize wisdom realizing emptiness, and also has the knowledge of how to do that, the means to do that. So so there's other, of course, the other important things are leading an ethical life. We talked about it earlier. So having a good heart, being kind, patient, right mind, right livelihood, right effort, and so on. The Pali Canon list various things which even today sound very relevant. Difference between each of those last two are drugs and alcohol, perhaps. So these suffering in the future, incredibly very calm. So just to sidetrack, I've been reading, and there are many wonderful stories, and many people in the 70s and 80s were dropouts, like hippies. Nepal and India were on the trail, leaving the Western comfortable life they'd come from. Probably well-educated Westerners, American, under criticism too for doing that by some of the hierarchies, Tibetan monasteries. So the different discussions or expansions on the different the eightfold paths. So a neater way of putting them together is in what they call the three Hara trainings. So in the Eightfold Path is probably more referred to in Theravada teaching, in that tradition, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and so on. And in the Mahayana, Tibetan Mahayana, they usually refer to the three higher trainings, which can encapsulate all of them. So ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So ethics covers right speech, and wisdom, right understanding, right thought. So these I think that the Eightfold Path and three high trainings are just for the Hinayanas. So these trainings, these three high trainings would be done it's part of the Mahayana tradition, done probably with a difference that the emphasis on the Mahayana, the motivation of compassion, doing it for the benefit of other beings. So that's what makes it a Mahayana practice. So the part of the Mahayana teachings is not to criticize the Theravada teachings, not because these Lama Yeshid was asked, he was amongst in a discussion where they were talking about the Hinayana, the lower vehicle, and the higher vehicle, the Mahayana. Normally they don't use the word Hinayana now. It has this. He said, don't feel that you're superior because you're practicing Mahayana. He said that's very, very dangerous. He said, if you look at your mind, most of you are not even at the Hinayana level. You're not even anywhere near the Hinayana level. So, we need to just be careful. There's this elitism. It's something that none of the teachers, or all the teachers, are warned against. They're not saying. What they're saying is, be careful. Because, this idea that you're superior because you're doing the bigger vehicle, the higher vehicle, the great vehicle, Mahayana is great. It's very much mistaken. And because we haven't, most of us haven't really done the primary school, the primary, high school, and university. So we're not. Most of us are not even at that initial stage. So it's good to just check up. Good advice from your feet. So just breath. it's underlying the teachings on emptiness, and the emptiness teachings are the heart of the realizing emptiness. So, and impermanence is part of that practice. So just next week, so this is, instead of, to counteract this tendency of wanting to be available to help other beings. So if we're just intent on healing our own suffering, never suffering again, being liberated, with no thought to those we leave behind, this is what the Mahayanas say, then who's going to be there to thank all our gurus and teachers for being up there, and it's like the university. So these beings are fully enlightened beings. They're the same as the Arhats. They completely have the wisdom realizing emptiness. But they're using the second wing, which is compassion, to become enlightened. They're using that as well as wisdom, which will give them the intention to come back. They can come back in any form that will be beneficial to humanity, to sentient beings. So it could come back as monks, it could come back as just ordinary people, the Manakaya aspect of Buddha. They come back in form that we can see, because we can't see them if they're just staying as an image, bridge, food, someone who needs something that will be of immediate help, and inanimate objects, a ship, a bridge, a light, a park. There's a prayer that has all these things in it to help us become enlightened. So different ways of developing bodhicitta, and we'll go into it next week. The grounding is equanimity, and to have happiness, and to do whatever is needed, to be hands-on, to achieve that. So much hands-on, they're willing to give all their happiness to help the other being. So the ultimate. So this is the ultimate. So there's different ways of cultivating it, which we'll look at next week. There's one of them is called Sevenfold Cause and Effect, where we contemplate an example of compassion for some part of the most strongest form of compassion in human relationship, mother and child. So they use this as an example of how the Bodhisattva cares for all other beings equally, as has achieved as the embodiment of Chenrezig, compassion. So we'd be lucky to have him on earth in that form as an example. So that's another one. The different ways it's tested when with the coronavirus. So virtually our familiar world has been swept away in a very short time, and we've got a whole new set of reality. So by constantly meditating on impermanence and how unreliable the outside world, the samsaric world, the world that we're living in, is, and death, whatever arises, will fall, whatever is born will eventually die. So these truisms, which intellectually we can easily nod to, but when it comes to actually confronting something like corona, we're actually all sometimes quite shocked and behaving incredibly irrationally, like running out and buying lots of toilet paper and crazy things. So it's not just the outside world that we contemplate. It's very good to, which could be a negative self-image, not a good meditator, never become enlightened, and so on. So this idea of impermanent our limitations are impermanent. The practice we apply to our self-limitations that we put on, and we are impermanent. It can be changed. So, so this change can be. So this change can be some within our control, without our control. There's different types of change. So within our control is what we've got when we practice meditation. Without our control is our effects of our so deeds in the past, like bad if we're not well, if we're poor, if we have difficulty with relationships and so on. So sometimes these are out without our control, but by working internally we can sometimes work through them. Okay, so basically in the practice we start with the body, acknowledging that our own body is impermanent and how fragile it is, right down to the very molecular level. And then we also notice that anything that is incarnated, like anything born, animals, humans and so on, will die. So we can acknowledge that the loss of relatives, friends and so on, pets. So then we look at impermanence of the mind. So just bring to mind the fast flashing movement of our mental consciousness, thoughts, memory. And then we can apply the impermanence to the negative aspects of our mind, which have no firm foundation. They're based on ignorance, delusions, misconceptions. So that impermanence is very helpful, because we can actually use that to undermine what is upholding those misconceptions and increase a positive Buddha nature, which is can be limitlessly improved and increased. So then we look at the external world, and acknowledge that whatever it is that's out there won't last. And just basically just recap on the benefits of realizing impermanence. The more we have this realization, the more easy it is to become renounced, to let go of that grasping at things that can't provide lasting happiness. An easygoing way through life, an easygoing attitude to our own demise when we die. So this is, and then the basis of understanding emptiness, that nothing has any essence that exists from its own side. So nothing external and not our own self, not our own I that we've been holding on to and cherishing. So letting go of that, cause of all happiness, benefit from self and all other beings. So letting go of that grasping itself. Okay, so let's do it. What time we've got left? Coming into our mind and body, settling the mind. A few moments on the breath, getting comfortable. Starting now meditation on permanence, starting with the body, permanence of our physical body, our physical self. Starting with the breath. Breath flowing into the body, molecules of oxygen being absorbed through the lungs and into the blood, transformed into carbon dioxide. Constant changing of chemicals in the body. Breakdown of food into energy constantly. The dying of old cells and renewing of new cells. Nothing in the body is permanent. Every cell in the body will eventually be replaced. And from the moment we were born, we're aging. Think of the body when we were young. Smooth skin. Every day we're reminded of the permanence of the body. Those who are sick and who have died. Even without the coronavirus, this will happen. All those now alive will eventually die, including ourselves. Then the changing of our mental world, our mind. We can notice when we meditate the flashing thoughts, memories. The mind is never still. Our experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, or changing. The pleasant never lasts. The unpleasant never lasts. Our experience of different emotions, happy, sad, being attracted, being repelled. The positive side of the negative parts of our body, of our mind, are impermanent. They have no full foundation. They're based on misconception. So attachment, aversion, ignorance, all can be remedied by meditation, by practice. These negativities are like clouds, and behind it is our Buddha nature, unstained, pure. Impermanence of our negativities. That's our hope. We know the hope is based on our Buddha nature. It's a certainty, our Buddha nature. By practice we can become liberated, enlightened. The external world now, easy to identify the changes. Sometimes it appears the room, the house is always there, but if we look deeper, change is happening moment by moment. And the atom, the subatomic particles, changing. The plant world, the natural world of the environment, changing. The climate changing causes, some of them man-made. Even at the universal level, suns being born, suns dying. Planets, galaxies rising and disintegrating. All dependent on all phenomena that depend on causes and conditions will change. All dependent phenomena will change. Can't be relied upon, often called contaminated. So the conclusion is, by realizing change, we form a firm basis for understanding emptiness, essenceless, the lack of essence of any phenomenon, external, even ourselves. Understanding this is the key to our liberation. Understanding the two truths, the conventional truth of how we exist and the ultimate truth of how we exist. Ultimately, without any self-existence, merely label. So now we can dedicate any positive mirrored energy imprints on our minds from tonight's teachings, practices, meditations, towards our progress along the path of whatever level higher. May we actually become fully enlightened Buddhists as a result of these practices and progressing along the path to full enlightenment. And where we become fully enlightened beings in order to benefit others and lead them to enlightenment. This is all the previous Buddhas have done and are doing now. So just before we end, I'll just read Lama Zopa's dedication, which is given us to say, particularly during this coronavirus period. If I can move it. Excuse me. Here we are. Dedication from Lama Zopa. Due to the merits of 3 times, collective dangers of earth, water, fire, and wind be pacified immediately. May perfect peace and happiness prevail in everyone's hearts and lives. May the Buddha Dharma, this world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. So dedicated to that. Thank you so much for being there. Go well, stay warm,